Well, hi guys, it's that time. It's our Bible teaching snippet of the day. Today's Monday. I hope that you had a wonderful weekend. I did, for sure. So let's hop in. I'm going to hit the ground running today and say something to go ahead and just kind of shock people. Did you know Jesus never said the word hell? No, he didn't. And actually, Jesus never spoke the word Hades, which is translated as the word hell in our English Bibles. Now, what we've been looking at so far in our in-depth study, pulling apart all of the different times the word hell was inserted, and I did say inserted. That is not a, quote, mistranslation. That's actually where somebody took the correct word out and put in a different word and substituted it, okay? So in the New Testament, we have been looking at, I've already in the past talked about the word Hades that was translated and mistranslated, substituted with the word hell, okay? Hades is nothing more than the grave, the realm of the dead, or the place of the dead. It is not a fire pit where people are burned forever, okay? Now we're looking at the 12 times that the word Gehenna has been used in the New Testament. It's 12 times, and it was changed, and the word hell was put in place. Jesus never used the word hell. The word hell didn't exist at the time. He couldn't have used the word hell. Jesus used the word Gehenna, okay? And actually, if you want to get right down to it, he might have even used the word Hinnon. And the Greek word is Gehenna, but it's the valley of Hinnon that is found in the Old Testament. This is where they sacrificed children to the god of Moloch and to Baal on a hot burning pit of fire. Okay. And it was a cursed valley. Okay. It was cursed. Okay. And then also what we found, the valley was cursed. It became a garbage dump, a place where garbage and refuse was burned by the fire that never went out because it was kept hot with sulfur and brimstone. They didn't let it go out. They fed the fire with brimstone and sulfur. Okay, and then we also, the worms that never die. Guys, that's because that there was always garbage like dead animals, criminals who had been executed, their bodies, parts of it might not have burned up because it didn't go down into the valley, into the ravine. So the worms had plenty of food to sustain them where they wouldn't die, okay? So I want to read this to you real quick just to start the week out right, okay? Let me say it, okay? It says, Gehenna was originally the valley of Hinnon, south of Jerusalem, where the filth and dead animals of the city were cast out and burned. Okay. Now, I've also shown you in these teachings that I've done about Gehenna, is also it was where criminals who had been executed, they were not allowed for the bodies to be released to family members because they were criminals, okay? And those bodies were thrown into the valley of Gehenna as a final way of showing dishonor, that that person was basically accursed by the community because of what they were accused of and found guilty of doing. May I add this? Did you know that it would have made the Jewish leaders more than happy to throw Jesus's body into the valley of Gehenna and burn him and dishonor him, and he be known throughout Jerusalem as one that was thrown out into that valley of Gehenna and was burned. But his rich uncle, yes, Josephus, bypassed the priesthood, okay, and went straight to Pilate and asked for Jesus's body. And he was given Jesus's body. That's a different teaching maybe, but I find it very interesting. Now today, let's get started and take another look at this these words that were mistranslated, substituted as the word hell, okay? Now, again, out of the 12 times the word Gehenna is found in our New Testament, is 11 of those is recorded as being said by Jesus, and one time it's used in the book of James. Throw it in one more time as a review. Isn't it interesting that if the valley of Gehenna actually means a lake of fire after somebody dies, and that's where they're thrown for all eternity to burn, eternal conscious torment in a lake of fire? Isn't it odd that The Gospel of John makes absolutely no mention about Gehenna, and that Luke only uses the word Gehenna one time, and it mirrors the teaching in Matthew. Luke 12:5 mirrors Matthew, 10:28. And then Mark, his one little set of, that we covered just last week, Mark 9:42 through 50, it is a mirror of what I'm going to teach about today. It mirrors Matthew chapter 18, which brings me right back into what I want to share with you about this today. Let me find my notes that I made, okay? I made a few little notes because I want to say a few things about this. I find it very interesting that Mark 9:42 through 50 and all of Matthew chapter 18, okay? We have verse snatched just to preach an angry God burning people in hell forever, when actually when we take it in context, what Jesus was teaching about is how people should live and act in that day and that time, interrelational in a community. I can prove that to you. Last week I talked about, he starts these teachings with talking about a little one and how we should not offend or cause a little one to stumble. And then he goes and talks about what measures you should take individually if you were there in his day. And look, we can apply this to us too today. But the point we need to remember is we don't understand what the Valley of Gehenna means in the year 2020. The people listening to that teaching that Jesus was doing, they were always a Jewish audience, and they understand the Valley of Gehenna was where dead criminals were, their bodies were burned, and it was a sign of dishonor to the person was dishonored, was not given a respectable burial, and it was a shame for the whole family that they were related to. Okay. So it wasn't about a future throw you in hell and burn you for all eternity. It talks about not offending little ones. Then he goes right into what measures you need to take not to be walking the wrong way. Okay, your eye, pluck it out. Your hand, cut it off. Your feet, cut it off. You know, if I was doing that hyperbole, exaggerated teaching today, I'd probably take a roll of duct tape. And I would look at people and say, when you get the urge to call your friend on your cell phone and gossip and backbite and tear them down and make other people think less of the person because you're angry with them, you need to buy a roll of duct tape. Duct tape your mouth shut, okay? And I would probably look at some guys and say, hey, and if your eye's offending you, take a piece of duct tape and cover that sucker up. So anyway, Jesus, my point here, was talking about how people needed to live in the community. He even ends it in Mark, well, let me pull that up. Mark chapter 9, verse 50. And he starts talking about this. He talks about constantly preserve yourself. Okay, be constantly preserving yourself, as he makes the reference of salt, preserving. Preserve yourself. Always habitually be at peace, and to live in peace with one another. That's his closing remarks about this teaching. This is about living in a community and not making each other stumble and fall. Now, I know I'm 9 minutes into my video. I get that, but I am going to talk to you a little bit about Matthew 18. And I want to bring out some things that we miss so easily. Let me start by saying, did you know if we read in context, we start in Matthew chapter 18, and we go down to verse 2. Jesus calls a little one and sets the young child in the midst of them as he does this teaching. During this discourse of teaching, okay, that lasts for 20 verses, Mark does a really quick little in and out teaching. His teaching on this that he records and puts in his gospel is only 9 verses. But this, Jesus talks for 20 verses straight. And then he goes into verse 21 and starts talking to Peter about forgiving other people. See, he's still talking about how we or they, he was talking about them, but it can apply to us, how we should be living among each other and entering into the kingdom life now. And I said that last week, that I wanted to talk about what it looked like to live in the kingdom. See, he's not talking about entering into the afterlife. We read this as, okay, these are the things you need to do so that when you die, you can go to heaven and not go to hell. And it doesn't talk about going to heaven or going to hell. It's talking about how we need to live here and now so we can enjoy the benefits of living a kingdom lifestyle. Okay, let me see if I can find my little note that I made on this. To enter into God's kingdom, it's the reign of kingdom that lives and dwells in us, and we release that to live in the kingdom here in the earth. Jesus said the kingdom is in you, the kingdom is here, the kingdom is now, okay? So we live in the kingdom through our own activities and how we relate and live with other people, how we influence other people. So this is what Jesus is talking about if you read in context, okay? And we have to read in context and understand what Jesus was trying to teach in that day to his listeners, and does it apply to us, and how does it apply? And that's the purpose of reading Scripture. Okay, so let's go back to Matthew 18. So he sets the little kid right in the middle of the crowd, and he starts using the child as an example of how people enter into the kingdom lifestyle. And then he gives the warning about making little ones stumble. I want to point this out. In Matthew 18, verse 1, just through verse 14, in 14 verses, okay, Jesus uses little child 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different times, whereas Mark only uses it one time in his 9 verses. I wanted to make that point to you today, okay? Let me see what I want to go to next here. I tell you what, I'm not going to go much longer today because tomorrow I'm going to pull out and drill deep down into chapter 18 because there's a couple of things that I desperately want people to get and understand and disconnect this false belief system about Jesus trying to teach about going to heaven or avoiding hell, not going to a place for all eternity and burning in a lake of fire. That is totally not what Jesus was talking about. Jesus was not talking about that. Tell you what, let me read to you the verse that we're going to examine here, this one specific verse where Jesus uses the word Gehenna. He doesn't use the word hell, he uses the word Gehenna. And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life. It doesn't say enter into heaven or enter into the afterlife. It says enter life. That means live in the kingdom realm right here, right now, among people. Just like Mark, living in peace with yourself and with everyone around you. Enter life with one eye than to have 2 eyes and to be thrown over into the fire of Gehenna, or to be cast into the fire of Gehenna. I've already told you that when people got into a big enough problem in the community, they would be carried to the court and judged for the way that they were talking about, talking to, and mistreating one another. And they could get some jail time, whatever, some punishment, whatever was merited out to them while they were under the Mosaic law. But if they went far enough, guys, they could literally be found as a criminal and be executed and dishonored by their bodies being thrown over into the valley of Gehenna, a place where irreputable people were disposed of, okay? So I'm going to call it for the day, and tomorrow I want to pick up and talk a little bit more about this scripture here, Matthew 18 through basically verse 14 with you tomorrow. But today I'm going to call it a good one, and I will see you right here tomorrow. I love you, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.